Sometimes the most dangerous battles of your life are not the ones fought in public, but the ones around your heart, around your relationships, around the people you love the most. There are moments when God begins to open your eyes, not to make you suspicious, not to make you fearful, but to make you discerning. Because the truth is, not every voice that whispers comfort loves you. Not every presence that smiles is harmless. And not every relationship in your life was sent from God. Some were sent to drain you, weaken you, break your confidence, silence your progress, and keep you tied to cycles that never end. There are people who walk into your life wrapped in affection, but carrying atmospheres that suffocate destiny. Their words feel sweet, but their presence drains your strength. Their friendship feels warm, but something in your spirit becomes restless around them. You laugh together, but after every conversation, you feel as if your energy has been pulled out of you. You try to rise, but somehow you shrink when they appear. You try to dream, but somehow your dreams feel smaller when you share them with them. And you wonder, why do I love someone who feels like they are slowly extinguishing my fire? When we talk here about a witch, we're not discussing broomsticks, potions, or folklore. We are talking about the spirit behind manipulation, the influence behind emotional control, the unseen hand behind spiritual draining, the silent presence that fights your confidence, your peace, your progress. A person becomes a witch in your life the moment they begin to use emotional pressure, guilt, intimidation, silence, charm, or closeness to control you and weaken your spiritual sense of identity. And because you love them, you don't easily notice it. Love blinds you. Affection makes you assume the best. Loyalty makes you explain away the red flags. Sometimes the most spiritually dangerous person in your life is not the enemy you identify, but the friend you excuse. One of the secret signs is that they fight anything in your life that strengthens you. The moment something brings you clarity, perspective, or growth, they subtly oppose it. When you try to pray, they call you too deep. When you try to dream, they say you're unrealistic. When you attempt discipline, they distract you. When you choose seriousness, they mock you. When you try to rise, they gently pull you back with stories, with emotions, with reminders of your weaknesses. They never fight you openly. They fight your strength quietly. Their goal is not to destroy your life all at once. It is to keep you weak enough to remain dependent on them. A person who celebrates your weakness but is threatened by your growth is not loving you. They're feeding on you. Another sign is the way their presence alters your emotional atmosphere. You may not detect it logically, but your spirit does. There are people you love, but each time they come close, you suddenly experience unusual heaviness, confusion, irritation, fear, or exhaustion. Nothing they did or said explains it physically, but something in you becomes unsettled. Discernment is sensing what the eyes cannot see and the mind cannot articulate. A spiritually draining person carries an aura that fights your inner peace. Peace is the signature of God. Confusion is the fragrance of manipulation. There are also people who always appear at the exact seasons when you're about to break free. The moment you begin to heal, they reappear. The moment you begin to mature, they call. The moment you begin to detach, they cry. The moment you start discovering your worth, they show affection. Their timing is too calculated to be coincidence. Their interest in you rises only when your absence threatens their influence over your life. They don't love you. They love the control they have over you. They know what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and how to twist your emotions until you return to the same cycle you were trying to escape. Their affection is not love. It is a leash. Another subtle sign is that your relationship with them constantly takes away your spiritual alertness. You pray less. You worship less. You lose interest in the things that once kept you aligned. They don't force you away from God. They simply occupy the space where God should be speaking. They don't forbid your spiritual growth. They just make sure you're always too emotionally entangled to give attention to it. They conquer your destiny by distracting your focus. Anything that consistently steals your spiritual sensitivity is fighting your future. there are those who thrive on secrets and guilt. They don't just know your weaknesses. They weaponize them. They remember your mistakes better than your progress. They remind you of your past more than your hope. They keep your failures alive so that you will always feel unworthy enough to stay dependent. They prefer you broken so you never realize how powerful you are when healed. A person who loves you covers you. A person who controls you cages you with your own history. Sometimes the clearest sign is something you cannot explain with words. You may be laughing with them, but your spirit is crying. You may be holding them, but your soul is withdrawing. You may be loyal in action, but your inner man is sounding an alarm. God sometimes warns you through internal discomfort. When someone's presence starts silencing your spiritual senses, ignoring that signal is dangerous. Love is powerful, but discernment is protection. And then there are those whose interest in your life is always one-sided. You pour, they receive. You give, they take. You encourage, they weaken. You open your heart, they open your hands. They never feed your spirit, but they always demand your emotions. They are never available when you are broken, but they appear instantly when they need something. Their closeness is seasonal and strategic, not relational. They monitor your life not to support you, but to ensure you never outgrow their influence. When someone loves you, their presence nourishes you. When a manipulative person loves the benefit of having you, that presence drains you. There are people whose words sound supportive, but their energy contradicts their speech. You can sense the difference between someone who celebrates you and someone who tolerates you. Discernment is not suspicion. It is spiritual intelligence. A manipulative person doesn't always attack your destiny. Sometimes they attach to it. They stay close enough to study your vulnerabilities. They stay long enough to weaken your resolve. They stay affectionate enough to confuse your perception. And because you love them, you misinterpret your discomfort as insecurity. But one of the most hidden signs is their silent hatred for anything that liberates you emotionally. The moment you find healing, they get uncomfortable. The moment you start setting boundaries, they become distant. The moment you choose self-respect, they accuse you of changing. They were never committed to your wholeness. They were committed to your availability. They don't want you healed. They want you attached. When someone consistently pushes you toward fear, guilt, confusion, and dependency, their influence over your life is not love. It is spiritual manipulation. And the tragic part is that most people never notice it until they step away. You cannot discern bondage while living inside it. Sometimes you only understand who someone truly was when distance finally lets you breathe again. These signs are not meant to make you paranoid. They're meant to help you recognize patterns that drain your destiny in the name of affection. Because the truth is, the most dangerous form of negative influence is the one wrapped in the arms of someone you love. And there are moments when God begins to show you that some people in your life do not attack your destiny with aggression. They attack it with subtlety. They don't shout at your purpose. They whisper against it. They don't destroy your confidence. They slowly puncture it until it leaks away over time. They don't confront your strength. They simply remain present until your strength adjusts itself to their weakness. And because their influence feels familiar, you no longer recognize that familiarity is not the same as safety. Some of the most dangerous bonds in life were formed in comfort, not wisdom. There are people who carry an unusual obsession with monitoring your emotions. They want to know when you're high and when you're low. They want to know your battles, your fears, your tears, your frustrations. But they are never uncomfortable when you're struggling. Instead, they almost feel empowered by your vulnerability. They treat your pain as if it keeps you within reach, as if your breaking keeps you within their control. You find yourself sharing everything with them, but receiving nothing that builds you in return. They are always present to heal your wounds, but never present to help you heal them. Their comfort is parasitic, not supportive. And have you noticed that some people only draw close when you are most emotionally fragile? They sense when you are tired, when you are discouraged, when you are lonely, when your heart is unsettled. Suddenly they appear with affection, with sympathy, with warmth. But it's not because they are sent to lift you. It is because they understand that your weakness is the ideal moment for influence. Manipulation does not always come through force. Sometimes it comes through tenderness at the wrong season, when someone only loves you deeply when you are down, but becomes intimidated when you rise. Something spiritual is happening there. Then there are individuals who consistently rearrange your priorities without appearing controlling. They make you feel like choosing them is an expression of love, and choosing yourself is an expression of betrayal. They make you feel guilty for having boundaries, guilty for needing space, guilty for wanting peace. They spiritually rewire your emotional system until your loyalty begins to look like bondage. You wake up one day and realize that you are now living your life according to their permission. You have lost your voice. You have lost your spontaneity. You have lost your fire. And the tragedy is that you never noticed the transformation because it happened gently. A subtle sign many people ignore is how your dreams react around certain individuals. There are people who do not need to insult your goals for your goals to die around them. Their atmosphere is enough. Their presence is enough. Their energy is enough. You bring out your visions and suddenly they feel unrealistic. You share your plans and somehow you feel irresponsible. You talk about your purpose and the passion you once had begins to shrink. It's not what they said. It's what their presence did. When someone becomes the silent funeral of your dreams, love does not justify keeping them close. Sometimes the sign is that you keep explaining them to others. You keep defending what they do, even when their behavior is clearly draining you. You say, they don't mean it like that. They're just going through a phase. They have a good heart. They love me. They're just complicated. You spend more time interpreting their actions than receiving their support. Love becomes an investigation. Loyalty becomes an excuse. Your spirit is trying to alert you, but your emotions are negotiating with the truth. Anytime you have to reinterpret someone repeatedly to protect their image in your eyes, something deeper is happening behind the scenes. There are all people who make you doubt your own instincts. They tell you you're overthinking when you're actually discerning. They call your clarity an exaggeration. They label your intuition as insecurity. They disconnect you from your own spiritual intelligence until you can no longer trust yourself. And when a person takes away your ability to trust your discernment, they begin to control your decisions. A spiritually manipulative person does not need chains or cages. They only need your self-doubt. Another rare sign is the way they react to the people who truly love you. They subtly compete with anyone who strengthens you. They may not say it directly, but they will shift your emotions quietly. You start feeling distant from the people who genuinely care and closer to the one who quietly drains you. A person who loves you will always celebrate the people who add value to your life. A person who controls you will always feel threatened by the people who free you. Jealousy is not just emotional. It can be spiritual. When someone tries to isolate you emotionally, it is not love. It is influence dressed as devotion. You may also notice that your life becomes strangely stagnant around them. Opportunities dry up. Motivation disappears. Creativity weakens. You feel as if your life is on pause, even though you are putting in effort. Every time you are about to move forward, something in your heart pulls back. Not because of fear, but because of emotional obligation to the person draining you. Destiny cannot thrive in an atmosphere of spiritual exhaustion. When someone's presence always precedes your stagnation, it is a sign that something beyond the natural is happening. Sometimes the clearest sign is the most uncomfortable one. You feel spiritually disconnected when you are close to them. You may still pray, but your passion fades. You may still worship, but your hunger weakens. You may still read, but your revelation becomes shallow. They don't attack your relationship with God. They simply drain the fire that makes that relationship alive. You begin to prefer talking to them over talking to God. You begin to find comfort in them instead of seeking clarity in prayer. You begin to lean emotionally in their direction until spiritual things feel distant. That shift may feel natural, but spiritually it is dangerous. And there are some who become unusually offended when you start growing. They accuse you of changing, as if growth is betrayal. They become cold when you evolve. They become distant when you become conscious of your value. Their love was never unconditional. It was dependent on your smallness. The moment you rise, their insecurity rises with you. When someone is comfortable with you broken, but uncomfortable with you becoming whole, you are not loved, you are used. There are individuals who keep you emotionally tired. You find yourself constantly fixing their issues, carrying their burdens, solving their problems, but never receiving strength from them. They drain you with crises, apologies, promises, and emotional storms. You become their therapist, their parent, their rescuer. But in the process, you lose yourself. Emotional exhaustion is not love. Sometimes it is spiritual entanglement masquerading as compassion. And then there are those whose affection becomes unpredictable. One day they are warm, the next day cold. One day they are attentive, the next day distant. One day they are full of affection, the next they disappear without explanation. This emotional inconsistency creates confusion that binds your soul. You begin to chase their approval. You begin to crave their attention. You become addicted to their affection because it is inconsistent enough to keep you insecure. Manipulation thrives in unpredictability. There are people who make you feel like you owe them your entire existence. Every act of kindness you've ever shown, they turn into a lifelong debt. Every sacrifice you made becomes a tool they use to control your emotions. They remind you of what they did for you, not because they genuinely care, but because they want to bind your loyalty to their memory. They keep records of their favors, but none of your pain. They forget the nights you stayed awake for them, but they remember the one time you couldn't be available. Emotional debt is one of the strongest chains the enemy uses to keep people tied to draining relationships. There are also individuals who always speak into your fears, but never into your courage. They know exactly what words to say to make you hesitant. They highlight every risk, every danger, every possibility of disappointment. They magnify your insecurities until you start doubting the voice of God that once burned in your spirit. They never encourage you to launch out. They only comfort you into staying small. Whenever someone becomes a megaphone for your fears, but a whisper for your faith, their influence is not neutral. Atmospheres can preach louder than sermons. Another hidden sign is when someone subtly plants division between you and your destiny relationships. They speak just enough negativity to make you question those who are genuinely assigned to your life. They insert tiny comments, nothing too obvious, just a seed, a slight remark, a passing joke, a casual suggestion. But over time, that seed grows into suspicion. Suddenly, you start seeing flaws in the people who were sent to lift you. You start distancing yourself from those who truly support you while drawing closer to the one who quietly orchestrated the division. Anyone who separates you from those who add value to your destiny is not protecting you. They are isolating you. There are those who have mastered the art of emotional crisis. Every time you try to focus on yourself, something urgent happens in their life. Every time you try to take a break, they suddenly need you. Every time you want to detach, they are drowning in a new storm. And because you have a compassionate heart, you run back to them. You pause your own healing. You postpone your own progress. You deny your own needs to rescue them again. But the crisis never ends. Their life becomes a revolving door of emergencies that keep you emotionally trapped. Manipulation does not always show up with a wicked face. Sometimes it hides behind constant neediness. Sometimes the sign is in your dreams. You sleep and you see yourself being chased, drained, silenced. You see yourself in battles that make no sense. You wake up feeling unrested, even though you slept for hours. Your spirit is picking up what your emotions are refusing to accept. The spiritual world often reveals what your heart cannot articulate. When your dreams become unusually heavy around a particular person, it is a signal that their presence is affecting you beyond the physical realm. Then there are people who disguise control as concern. They say, I just want the best for you. But what they really want is the best version of you that benefits them. They wrap their manipulation inside worry. They wrap their domination inside advice. They sound like protectors but behave like dictators. Their concern always limits you, never liberates you. You share your plans and they respond with fear. You share your ideas and they respond with doubts. You share your joy and they respond with warnings. Concern that birth restriction is not love, it is surveillance with a smile. Some individuals carry an uncanny ability to shift your mood instantly. You can be joyful, energized, full of purpose, but the moment they speak, something inside you collapses. Their words are heavy, their tone is draining, their presence is unsettling. You don't even know why, but something in your spirit folds inward. If a person consistently pulls you down emotionally without saying anything harmful, it means their spirit is speaking louder than their words. We are more spiritual than we realize. Discernment often picks up what language cannot communicate. Another sign is the way they make you question the people who helped you become who you are. They minimize the voices that shaped your growth. They disrespect the mentors who lifted you. They devalue the principles that strengthened you. They want to be your only source, your only guide, your only influence. When someone tries to monopolize your emotional world, they are not protecting your heart. They are colonizing it. Sometimes the sign is in how your body reacts. You feel anxious when you see their name. Your stomach tightens when they enter the room. Your energy drains when they text you. Your shoulders tense when they call. Your body can discern what your feelings deny. You may think you're just stressed, but your spirit is sending signals through your nervous system. There are individuals who love to keep you in emotional suspense. They never fully commit, but never fully let go. They never fully open up, but never fully disappear. They give just enough affection to keep you hoping and withdraw just enough to keep you insecure. You spend months trying to decode them, trying to understand them, trying to interpret their behavior. Confusion becomes the new normal. Anxiety becomes the new rhythm. And you start mistaking emotional chaos for passion. When someone destabilizes your peace consistently, their presence is not a blessing. You will also notice some people who are threatened by your self-discovery. The moment you start healing, they say you're changing. The moment you start setting boundaries, they say you're acting different. The moment you choose yourself, they say you're selfish. They were never committed to your growth. They were committed to your availability. Your healing interrupts their control. There are people who cannot stand to see you happy without them. The moment you start enjoying your life, they create drama. The moment you feel free, they pull you back with emotional tricks. They start arguments. They withdraw affection. They use silence. They use guilt. They use tears. They need to remind you that your joy is tied to them. But joy that depends on a person's emotional temperature is not joy. It is captivity. Sometimes the sign is simply that your spirit keeps whispering, pay attention. Everything may look normal. Everything may sound harmless. Everything may appear innocent. But something deep inside refuses to be silent. You feel a subtle check. You feel an inner pullback. You feel a quiet uneasiness. Discernment does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers. There are people who become nervous whenever you begin to find yourself again. The moment they notice that your confidence is rising, they quickly create situations to destabilize you emotionally. They may suddenly bring up old issues, reopen past wounds, or remind you of the moments you fell short. They are afraid of your clarity because clarity breaks the chains they quietly wrapped around your heart. When someone keeps resurrecting what God buried in your life, they are not nurturing you. They are nurturing the version of you that benefits their control. There are also those whose presence always feels like you are walking on emotional eggshells. You are careful with your words, careful with your tone, careful with your laughter, careful with your truth. You shrink yourself to avoid conflict. You suppress your personality to avoid triggering their insecurity. You silence your voice to maintain the peace they never give you. When you have to lose yourself to keep someone comfortable, their presence has already become a prison. Another hidden sign is when the person subtly competes with your identity. They imitate your strengths but secretly resent them. They praise your uniqueness publicly but criticize it privately. They admire you enough to copy you but envy you enough to sabotage you. Their compliments feel sharp, as if there is a hidden blade behind the sweetness. You sense admiration and rivalry living in the same breath. A person who loves you celebrates your difference. A person who manipulates you tries to dilute it. Sometimes the sign is how they handle your silence. When you become quiet to reflect, to breathe, to think, they panic. They become uneasy when you step back. They rush to fill the space with their presence, their demands, their emotions. Silence threatens manipulative people because silence gives you clarity, and clarity breaks influence. A person who fears your silence fears your ability to see them clearly. There are individuals who get irritated when you experience peace without them. They monitor your expressions, your tone, your mood. If you are too calm, they assume something is wrong. If you are too joyful, they try to disrupt it. If you are too distant, they interpret it as betrayal. Their emotional equilibrium depends on controlling your state of mind. And the danger is that after a while, you begin adjusting your emotions to keep them from reacting. You stop being yourself to protect their instability. Another sign is the way they twist every confrontation into sympathy. When you bring up your pain, they talk about their own. When you express your needs, they express their exhaustion. When you set boundaries, they act wounded. Suddenly, you are apologizing for the very thing that hurt you. They have mastered the art of emotional reversal, where you come seeking clarity and you leave feeling guilty. This cycle keeps you afraid of expressing your truth because speaking up always ends with you comforting the person who hurt you. There are also people who become over-involved in your spiritual journey, not to support you, but to monitor you. They want to know what God told you. They want to know what you're sensing. They want to know every dream, every instruction, every revelation. But not because they celebrate your walk. They simply want to ensure your spiritual direction does not lead you away from their influence. A person who loves your destiny helps you grow. A person who loves control keeps you dependent. You may notice that around certain individuals, your vulnerabilities always feel unsafe. You tell them a secret and suddenly feel uneasy. You share your struggle and immediately regret it. You open your heart and later wonder if you expose too much. Your spirit becomes protective, not because you are paranoid, but because something in them mishandles the weight of your truth. Love creates safety. Manipulation creates exposure. Then there are those who never take responsibility for anything. Every conflict becomes your fault. Every misunderstanding becomes your mistake. Every disagreement becomes proof that you don't understand them. You begin to believe that something is inherently wrong with you. They turn your compassion into self-blame. They turn your patience into self-doubt. They turn your willingness to understand into emotional exhaustion. Responsibility becomes a one-way street draining your soul. Another sign is when they never want you to grow beyond their comfort zone. If you start reading more, they tease you. If you start thinking deeper, they call you strange. If you start dreaming bigger, they call you unrealistic. If you start distancing yourself from negativity, they call you arrogant. They want you predictable, not powerful. They want you accessible, not elevated. Some people carry an unusual resistance to your transformation. The moment you change your habits, they become irritated. The moment you upgrade your standards, they feel attacked. The moment you raise your expectations, they accuse you of pride. Growth exposes who is truly for you. Anyone who fears your transformation fears losing their power over you. Then there are those whose lives seem strangely intertwined with your setbacks. Every time you fall, they are present with comfort. Every time you fail, they have the right words. But every time you're about to rise, they disappear. They are comfortable with you wounded, but absent when you reach for healing. They are available for your weakness, but unavailable for your restoration. They are drawn to your brokenness, but allergic to your strength. There are people who study you, not to love you, but to learn how to influence you. They pay attention to what makes you nervous, what makes you emotional, what makes you doubt. They observe your triggers, your patterns, your soft spots. They gather information not to understand your heart, but to navigate your soul. Understanding becomes a weapon in the hands of someone who seeks control. Sometimes the sign is simply that you are never truly yourself around them. You adjust, you act, you shrink, you conform. You become careful instead of comfortable, tense instead of free. You begin to feel like you are living a version of yourself designed for them. When someone forces your identity into suffocation, their presence is spiritually draining. And hear me, there comes a moment in every destiny when God himself demands that you open your eyes, not to walk in suspicion, not to live in fear, not to label innocent people, but to finally recognize the voices, the energies, the relationships, and the emotional bonds that silently drain the life out of your purpose. Discernment is not for attacking people. Discernment is for protecting destiny. It is for recognizing what pulls you forward and what pulls you down. It is for knowing who carries oil for your future and who carries shadows for your downfall. At the end of the day, the greatest danger is not that someone around you might be a witch. The greatest danger is that you remain blind to the influences shaping your decisions, your emotions, and your spiritual clarity, because anything you cannot discern, you cannot defeat. Anything you cannot name, you cannot resist. Anything you continually excuse will eventually control you. This is why God brings teachings like this, to awaken you, to empower you, to restore your authority, and to remind you that your destiny is too precious to be governed by confusion, manipulation, or emotional entanglements masquerading as love. Your life is too valuable to be reduced by subtle influences that dim your fire and silence your discernment. So today, let this become your resolve, that you will guard your atmosphere, guard your mind, guard your relationships, and guard your heart with the wisdom of God. That you will love people sincerely but walk with clarity. That you will show compassion but refuse captivity. That you will embrace connection but reject manipulation. That you will forgive people but refuse to abandon your discernment. Because the truth is simple. Your destiny is calling, and anything, whether spiritual, emotional, or relational, that weakens your walk with God or suffocates your potential must lose its place in your life. Not by hatred, not by fear, but by the authority of wisdom, by the courage to choose wholeness, and by the boldness to protect the version of you God designed before anyone ever entered your story. This is your moment to rise with understanding, to see clearly, to walk boldly, to love wisely, and to finally step out of every subtle influence that has kept your greatness sleeping. Not because you are afraid, but because you are destined for more than what manipulation, confusion, or spiritual blindness will ever allow you to become.